this is Dancing Rabbit, and welcome to another late pagan perspective. Here in Houston, it really feels like fall has fallen. It's cooler, it's drier, the sky is clear, and there's a light breeze stirring. So it feels really nice. I know we're going to have some more hot days before it's all over, but it's definitely fall feeling. This week's question comes from Hercules 1, and it has to do with polytheistic traditions and Wiccan privilege. I'm hoping that at least one of the hosts has read the question in its entirety. It certainly deserves a reading. However, it is rather long, so I'm not going to read it right now. First, a few definitions so that we make sure we're all on the same dance card and we really understand what the other is trying to say. When I use the word pagan, I'm talking about the pre-Christian European, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean religions. It comes from the Latin word paganus, which means country dweller, hick, bumpkin, rustic. And that's because that Christianity, being a religion of the book, was originally successful among the educated, the literate, the city folk, whereas the people out in the countryside tended to hang on to their polytheistic, pantheistic, pre-Christian religions considerably longer. Now, Wicca. Wicca was founded or created, made up, discovered, formulated by Gerald Gardner in the late 1930s, 1940s in England. And I honestly believe what Gerald was trying to do was to revive or recreate the ancient pre-Christian witchcraft of Britain. I think that he probably did meet with a group of people that were practicing some sort of folk magic in the New Forest region of England, and he borrowed some of what they were doing. But since he didn't have a great deal of that as a source of information, he borrowed from all sorts of other sources and put together something that was useful to him. You could say useful or undocumented personal gnosis. Now, Wicca, as Gerald Gardner formulated it, was coven-based, was an initiatory religion, was led by a priest, a high priestess, and a high priest. It was oath-bound, so it was secret. And because of that, it didn't grow very rapidly. I mean, consider you're going to have to know somebody that knows somebody to get into this thing, and they're not going to tell you about it, so they're definitely not writing books or publicizing it. Sort of like Fight Club. The first rule is don't talk about Fight Club. Wicca came to the United States probably in Gardnerian covens, but the big splash was when Raymond Buckland wrote a couple of books about it. And his twist on Wicca was that you could do it on your own. You could do it solitary, and that you could self-initiate. So you didn't have a high priest and priestess that you went to and submitted to their rule. And that, along with the publication of a lot of books, particularly from Llewellyn Publications, really spread what is sometimes called eclectic Wicca or neo-Wicca. I know that some of the people that are traditional British Wiccans, Alexandrian Gardnerian, say that it's not really Wicca. Well, that's a matter of word definition. I think for brevity's sake, I would call it Wiccan-based. And since that's how I came into paganism, a lot of what I do is Wiccan-based. It is by far the largest pagan denomination or collection of paths because there are all sorts of different kinds of Wicca. Now, polytheistic paganism or Reconstructionism is quite different, and I think that it really became popular a few decades after Wicca made its big splash on the scene. Reconstructionist paganism is polytheistic, and it really looks back to what were the pre-Christian pagans doing in a particular culture, because there wasn't one universal European paganism. We know that now. The one that I'm most familiar with is the Germanic and Norse traditions, which usually is called Asatru. So if you were interested in Asatru, you would read the sagas, the Eddas, the poetic and the prose Edda, and you would look to what is it from the culture of the Viking Age and shortly thereafter that is applicable to you now in the 21st century. So it's not a matter of going back and playing Viking. Not everything that was done in the religion at that time really works now. But a great deal of it, I think, would. The other Reconstructionist traditions, Celtic, the Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and some of the Middle Eastern, Mesopotamian, and Levant traditions are doing the same kind of thing. They're going back to the written documents that survive from those religions and attempting to reconstruct as best can be done. So it's quite different from Wicca in a lot of ways. For one thing, if you're, say, an Egyptian pagan, you don't do the Wheel of the Year with the 8 Sabbaths. Most of the Reconstructionist paganisms are not moon worshippers, so you don't have full moon esbats as you do in Wicca. The whole idea of the god and the goddess, the lord and the lady. In Wicca, it's the horned god and the triple goddess, and the idea of a sort of soft polytheism that all goddesses are the goddess. They're aspects of the goddess, and all of the different gods are aspects or faces of the horned god. This is a Neoplatonic idea. It's also quite prevalent in Hinduism. It really was not part of the actual pre-Christian European, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern paganism. That religion was, at least in its earliest forms, polytheistic, where the various deities were seen not as archetypes or symbols, but as actual individuals, as actual personalities, and they were separate. Pan was not Dionysus. Pan was Pan. So I think that part of the thing is with this Wiccan privilege, it's a little bit like white privilege now in the 21st century. We don't have slavery, we don't have de jure segregation, but we white people do still have a lot of advantages simply for being white in this culture. And we may not really be aware of it until we spend some time with our non-white friends or colleagues and listen to their experiences, or perhaps even see their experiences as sort of an observer, being there when there is this advantage being given. I don't think there's any organized effort to create a Wiccan advantage. I think it's something that naturally happens when you are the majority. And I think this is what it sort of looks and feels like. Wiccan-based pagans being unaware that there are these Reconstructionist traditions just assume that everybody does a ritual inside a quartered cast circle with quarter candles and the 4 elemental tools, when that's not the case. So if we're going to have an open ritual that just anybody can come to, like at a pagan pride, it is almost always done in a more or less Wiccan template. And I would think that if I were a Slavic Reconstructionist or Asatru, I might be a little put off by the fact that my tradition wasn't represented, wasn't recognized, wasn't honored. So I think as those of us who are operating in a Wiccan-based sort of tradition, we need to educate ourselves and be aware that there is more to paganism than just Wicca. This is not the whole sum of it at all. On the other side, if you are a Reconstructionist, I have run into some of what is almost like sort of a snobbery of that, well, okay, that's just Wicca, that's just kind of a made-up religion cobbled together, and we are the real heirs of the ancient paganism. We are polytheists, and we study the sagas and the traditions, and we have all of this literature that we are basing what we're doing on, whereas the Wiccans just kind of made all this stuff up, and they're still making stuff up. They're writing their own little rituals, and if it feels good, do it. I think the goal of any spiritual path, particularly pagan spiritual paths, is to connect with the divine, to connect with the universe, with nature, and with other people. And if what you're doing does that, then it does what it's supposed to do. Your path is good for you, my path is good for me. Just because they're different doesn't make one better or worse. And you've got to consider that every tradition was made up at some time by somebody or somebodies. Perhaps it evolved over a period of time. It was not the product of one or two people. So I would really encourage those of you who are into a Reconstructionist, polytheistic paganism to be a little more accepting of your Wiccan brothers and sisters, because it too has a validity. And realize that people who are very new to whatever path they're on haven't had the time and the experiences to be experienced and to be aware of all of these things that, one day if they stick with it and they're good people, they will be aware of. So be gentle with people, Don't take offense. Get a little tougher skin. So that really is, kind of about all I have to say on the subject. I hope that I have answered your question. If not, please leave a comment and I'll try to get back with you. If not that week, maybe in coming weeks. So, Stancing Rabbit, have a happy fall, blessed be, and bye-bye.